Hello there, and welcome to a very special episode we're going to be doing today. As you may have seen in the thumbnail, this is going to be um, a picture compilation. We haven't done one of these in a little while. We've only got a few under our belt, so still a bit rusty, or maybe not rusty so much as just going to be showing you a bunch of pictures of a project that I recently got finished. This one took a little while just because it was a bit of a pain, but we did manage to get through the project. I was so exhausted after every time trying to work on this thing. But yes, and I'm going to call this I guess series. I'm gonna start up for any other car projects, if any major projects that we're going to be doing. We're going to call it Real Car Mechanics Simulator. So yeah, just a little edit there, a little play on the car mechanic simulator games. But this is Real Car Mechanic Simulator. Unfortunately, I only have pictures um, because I do like to work. I don't like to be videotaped while I'm working. I just want to take a few pictures, work on it a little while, take a few more pictures, and just do that until we can get it. Now, unfortunately, this is a new thing I'm trying in my recording software. It's called Image Slideshow. So this allows me to slideshow through pictures without having to go through Windows Photos and anything like that. So just so you know, it's just going to be picture compilations. It's going to be no background audio, just going to be me talking about each individual picture. So, and that brings us to our um, very first picture right here. So this got brought about by um, a family member's car. They were driving. It was 2009 Pontiac um, G6, and it has the little Eco Tech inline four. It's a 2.4 liter inline four. So basically, just means four cylinders in a line. It is a really small motor. It doesn't even have power steering. It has electronic. It has an electronic power steering motor inside of it. So no power steering pump either. Yeah, just and it's actually pretty good on gas. They were driving home from work one day, and all of a sudden they heard a big old bang, and then the engine just quit, and they pulled over, and well, what had happened was the engine basically grenaded itself. It had quite a lot of miles on it. Have no idea why it did it, but it did, and we'll see some pictures of the destruction later when we get further into this. I just got to kind of preface it the video just a little bit. Um, so yeah, and I'll tell you when I'll tell you when we get started with the pictures here, swapping between them and all that stuff, and it's going to be quite interesting. There'll be a small little video at the very end, just a little bonus, I guess you could say, of this project, of course. And so that prompted us to get an engine. We needed to source an engine for this car because they need this car. Um, and this is not the car in the photo, by the way. The car we have is a white. This one's actually an '07 Pontiac G5, but it had the same motor in it. Just had to swap a few sensors and the fuel rail and stuff, but yeah, no big deal there. But we went to a junkyard, and obviously, like in the thumbnail, it's a junkyard engine swap. So basically, what it is, or what you do is, um, you either call around or get your information on a couple of junkyards that you can go to pull the engine yourself. This is what it is we went out there to pull the engine ourselves. We found uh, uh, a few promising looking cars. The one thing you want to look for when you got an engine is you want to look for a vehicle that's either been in a wreck, where the engine will still be good, because how did it end up in a wreck? Good chances that it was probably running, um, or like transmission failure. If it's been abandoned, you want to try to stay away from cars that either usually have too many oil leaks, or you want to pull your spark plugs And because spark plugs can actually tell you how an engine was running. If the bottom of the spark plug's covered in oil, more than likely it was burning oil. If it's covered in like a white powdery substance, or it looks super super clean, but the spark plug like around the ceramic around the top looks very old, or it's very rusty, then you know that it was burning coolant, because coolant will either leave a white powdery substance or it'll clean the spark plug, because when it's compressed and burned like that at a very high temperature, coolant actually turns into a slight, almost like a steam cleaning effect, and it actually cleans stuff, but it's very bad. So don't worry about it. Don't do that. Don't put coolant uh, in your cylinder. It's not a good thing. But this particular car, when we had found it, we looked for a few of them. One was the other car that we had picked out. Oh, the engine was completely coated in oil, and it looked like it just been through hell. So um, we decided, well, we'll look around, find another engine. We found this car, this particular car. It had an okay looking engine. It had a few little oil leaks, it looked like, but the spark plugs looked good. Um, I turned the motor over with a ratchet on the crankshaft on the harmonic balancer. You can turn that big old bolt in the middle of the harmonic balancer, or in the middle of the crankshaft pulley, whichever's there. Basically, turn the motor, and it turned pretty freely. You could feel the compression, so the engine was good. I looked underneath completely just inspected the car. This one, they hit something on the highway. They hit something bad and destroyed the transmission, and that's why this car was abandoned. Um, that's how the junkyard got a hold of it, of course. Was the transmission was bad. It had a big old chunk taken out of it because it was a cast aluminum pan, just like the oil pan. The transmission pan is cast aluminum. So what that means is it basically anything that hits it is almost shatters like glass. It breaks off chunks like glass. It's very crazy. Not as weak as glass, but it's definitely once it's got a hole in it, that you're done. That thing needs replaced. But the transmission casing itself, one of the mounts for the transmission, the mount had actually they hit something so hard on the transmission that the mount had actually punched a hole into the side of the casing of the transmission. So of it, and unfortunately, just a side note, you won't be able to see my cursor, but yeah, we'll go ahead and go through. We'll get started with this here. So yeah, just a general look at the car, as this was after we were pretty much done and ready to pull the engine, because we were on a very, very small time window. We had about 5 hours. That's that five in the picture there. It's actually kind of funny. It took us about 5 hours to pull the engine, and we had about 5 hours. So we didn't have long to get this engine out of this car. So we just had to go. I didn't have time to take pictures before and after. Yeah, just a little side view there. Another little side view. You can see my that orange handle. Um, that's my pry bar, because you gotta, once you get the engine loose, get all the transmission bolts out, everything disconnected. Sometimes you gotta pry the engine away from the transmission, because when they mate, they um, after a long time they tend to stick together a little bit. So you need a pry bar for that. So this is the engine, like I said, pulling it out of the junkyard. A little bit older of an engine, but actually looked in decent enough condition, as you can see there. It's actually not bad. Had a little bit of a valve cover leak, which we could easily fix. So went with this one. And this is the engine. Now some of these are going to be cropped a little bit differently. Um, and one of the main reasons for these images cropped differently is either I took the photo normally instead of holding the phone sideways. I took it with the phone upright. Either that, or I've cut out information that's sensitive, sensitive info, things like that. You can't give away everything. But yeah, so this is basically the engine that we pulled at the junkyard. It actually looks in fairly decent condition. There's um, a few little oil leaks and things like that, but nothing major, nothing we couldn't fix, um, and whatnot. So pretty good engine, uh, fairly good. I thought so. Yeah, and what they did was on this one, they you can see the exhaust. We didn't cut the exhaust. Um, the junkyard here when they get a car in. They'll drain all the fluids out of it and they'll cut the catalytic converters out because they'll take the catalytic converters and sell them because they're actually worth a decent amount of money because they got precious metals in the catalytic converters. That's why you always hear the stories of the catalytic converters, the thieves that would steal catalytic converters off of people's cars to make a quick buck. So yeah, this particular place, and I'm pretty sure all junkyards, they cut the catalytic converters to sell them individually, um, and whatnot. So that's why that's cut like that. And we couldn't get the manifold off of there, so we had to pull it like it is right there. Unfortunately, yeah, not too bad. It even has little mounts, as you can see it, kind of on the side there. There's this little black piece with like a ring or a hole in it, um, to hook chains to and stuff to pull the engine. So a little bit thoughtful from the engineers there for us to pull that engine. Actually, was pretty easy once we got everything disconnected. And as you can see here, I don't know what that little flash was. That was weird. But as you can see here, this is the car that we put it in. So this is the engine that we need to pull out of the car. This is us kind of getting started on it. Um, Luckily, I have a family member of mine that allowed us to work in his car mechanic shop. So we were able to work in his shop to pull this engine and swap it out and whatnot. A little bit of a darker image there. That's me with the flash on. Uh, didn't come out so well, but yeah, this is the family member's car. They've blown the engine on that. So anyway, okay, and so here's the engine. Now you saw that little bit of cut there. It's because um, my recording software only does 10 images at a time with this slideshow thing, so I gotta keep editing the source, and it only does 10 images, so I had to put the images into 10 images into folders and whatnot just to get this all to work right. But yeah, here's the engine sitting on a tire, just hanging out. That's the engine from the junkyard. That's one we're getting ready to put in. Sorry if some of these images are a little bit blurry. That's just the way it is. Unfortunately, can't pay attention to every single image I take. I am not a good photo taker. And yep, engine's still in there, getting all the electricals disconnected and whatnot. Just real pain. There's a lot of little electrical on this, a lot of little connectors because it's what they call VVT, which is variable valve train. So there's four sensors for the VVT stuff. There's two sensors on the top, um, and then there's two sensors on the right side of that motor down below the valve cover. There's two more there, and then you've got each individual connector. You got four of them for the ignition system, and then you've got another set of wires that runs over the top there, right underneath the fuel rail. I wish you could see my pointer. Unfortunately, you can't, but there's four of those because there's four injectors, one per cylinder, and then you've got electricals for, um, temperature sensor, throttle body position sensor. You got the mass airflow sensor. You just got sensors. This is a '09. It's got all these sensors on. Ugh, really crazy. And yep, and these images for a little bit are just going to be just us taking pictures of all these different sensors, the plugs and stuff. Sometimes you can get these plugs mixed up. Um, a lot of the times it's usually pretty plug and play and it's fairly easy to tell, but sometimes there'll be some connectors that'll be the same as others. So um, you want to try and take a picture of everything and try to get everything mapped out so you know where all of that is and how to route stuff and hoses and wires and just all different kinds of stuff. So make sure it's all routed. And this, you can tell this exhaust system is slightly different. Um, this one, um, the manifold's a lot bigger than our previous one, so we just left the manifold on the car, or took it off the engine rather than pulling the engine with the manifold on there. Like I said, just different plugs and wires. So all kinds of different things. Yeah, plugs and stuff for the sensors and stuff. You can see this whole side. See how this fan is covered in oil? That's actually where the uh, the damage happened and blew the oil all over the place. It was a big mess. There's the two VVT sensors I was telling you about, the gray and black ones right next to each other. The those top ones. One's for intake and one's for exhaust. That's why there's two different ones. And just more general wiring, routing, and hose routing stuff. Just disconnecting. That one goes down to the transmission. I think that's the transmission speed sensor, that long wire that goes down to the back there. Pretty sure. Okay, so slight angle change on that image there. Guess I had two of them. I try to go through every image to make sure I don't have duplicates, but this one might have slipped through. Yeah, there's another duplicate. Wow, I was really not paying attention. But as you can see, everything's covered in oil down there. It's a mess. Those are heater core hoses, and it's all kinds of mess. That one was actually supposed to be a ground at the top of the image there. We wanted to make sure we got that ground back in that same spot because there's a couple different holes there and whatnot. Yeah, there it is. There's a couple different holes in that area that ground could go to, so we wanted to make sure we got it exactly back where on the new engine, well, the junkyard engine, make sure it was on there. You can actually see there's the fuel rail at the top of the engine, and then you see a little plugs just below that. Those are two injectors. Those are where the injectors are located. There's one of the VVT sensors, that green wire. Nope, never mind. That's not it. That's um, that's an airflow sensor right there on the intake. Never mind. I'm an idiot. Yeah, so up close. That's actually on the intake. The intake's plastic, by the way, too. Got to be real careful. There's the TPS with throttle position sensor. It tells you, since it's a computerized one, it measures how much throttle you're putting out on your pedal, and that will transmit over to here um, to open up the throttle, because it used to be cables, but the newer technology, it's all electronic. And this is, it's a newer technology, and this thing's over, let's see, this thing's over 10 years old already. There's the starter. You can see the starter's just absolutely soaked in oil. It's bad. But I want to take a picture of it. This one's actually nice because you just got to worry about the battery. You just got to worry about the battery and the alternator wires with the one stud and that one nut that looks all rusty. And that pink wire, that's the starter wire. So it's just a plug. So it's fairly nice to fairly nice. You just unplug it and it's good to go. There used to be a tiny little nut and a tiny little stud with a tiny little wire. You had to keep track of that. Pain in the butt. Now it's a little bit easier. We had a brand new starter that was on that other car that we pulled off with that engine, but the starter unfortunately had the older system, so that starter went to waste, unfortunately. And yeah, just more images of hoses, and that's the oil dipstick tube there. Move on. Yep, and there's transmission bolts. I took a picture of that. You see the wires up there at the top, but on the left side, you can see that's another ground right there. That's where the battery grounds directly to the transmission casing. So there's a couple transmission bolts. They're actually bolt studs or stud bolts or whatever you want to call them, but yeah, whatever. And then this one, there's the bottom side of the motor. That's actually where the starter was. You can see that big old hole in the bottom right of the image. That big old hole right there, that's where the starter goes, and that's actually the flywheel inside there, or the flex plate, whatever you want to call it. So the starter engages that flex plate, which then turns the motor over so you can so the engine can get started. Up there, I think that's a temperature. No, that's a, what is that? No, it's oil pressure sending unit. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the oil pressure sensor. So then the car can tell you there's no oil pressure and shut the motor off, hopefully. This one grenaded, so I didn't even get the chance. And there's the destruction on the left side. As you see, big old hole. This is right in the side of the block on the front side of the motor. Well, it's the side of the motor, but it's the front side. It's the front part of the car, basically, because the motor sits sideways in these front wheel drives. But yeah, that's a big old chunk taken out of the case of the engine. So there's no saving this. It's done. The engine's done. It's over with. There might be some parts that are left that are salvageable, but this is done. The timing chain was all balled up. The pretty sure the camshafts, because it's what they call a DOHC engine, which is a dual overhead cam, which means the camshafts are inside the head themselves at the top of the motor. One for the intake and one for the exhaust valves. But yeah, this is completely broken. Just done. Engine's just done. The engine turns a little bit, but it just locks after a few revolutions. It just locks up. So no good. So yeah, this is us getting the engine out. As you can see, you see this right hand on the bottom right of the screen there. If you follow that thumb, where that thumb is aiming there, there's actually a hole. You can actually see clear through this engine from one side of the block to the other. And this big old thing that's got this silver tube going into it on the right side, that's actually the water pump. Um, so you have to have a specialty tool, which we actually, the reason I'm bringing that up is because the water pump on the junkyard engine, when we swapped it out, got it all running, we actually had a coolant leak out of the water pump. So we had to change out the water pump. You had to have a specialty tool to hold the timing chain sprocket that goes to the water pump, because the timing chain actually turns the water pump. You have the specialty tool that holds that sprocket in place. You unbolt the water pump from that sprocket, and then you can pull that whole unit off the backside. Of course, after you take a few bolts out of the outside. But yeah, a freaking $40 tool for a one-time use. Bull crap. Ugh. And yep. So this is the backside. This is the backside of the motor. Um, and then I don't know. This image didn't really capture it where you can see all the way through, but yeah, this is a smaller hole to the bigger hole on the other side. This is the backside of the motor. Um, yeah, a lot of destruction. There's the front side of the other motor. There's the timing chain on the very left. You can kind of see it poking through on the left side. Um, yeah, just huge destruction. And there's kind of a more pulled out image of the motor itself, just of it just hanging out, hanging out on the train. There's the front side. We actually had to swap the motor mount there right in front. Hard to explain where that is. It's the big silver piece that's above the other big silver piece that has the wheel on it. I had to swap motor mounts because they swap motor mounts from '07 to '09, so no big deal. There's the back side, flex plate, that big old wheel, geared wheel there. That's the flex plate, whatnot. And this is, sorry for the blurriness. Unfortunately, I don't have another image of this, but this is with the engine out of the car. We pulled it out through the top. They generally wanted you to drop the subframe with the engine and transmission together and then pull the engine out that way. And you basically pull the engine, transmission, and subframe along with all the suspension, or some of the suspension parts detached from that. You drop the subframe with the engine and transmission together out at the bottom of the car, and then you detach the engine from the transmission. But to me, that's way too much work. Um, it, it's a little bit more frustrating, but it's also a little bit easier in as far as time frame to be able to just disconnect the engine transmission and pull it out. So this big old thing that's not the rusty top thing, but the other big thing, that's the transmission. It's mostly on the right side of the image. That kind of goes around the middle of the image there. That's all the transmission. and then the exhaust manifold. That's the rusty thing. Like I said, we left it in the car. And this is with it completed. We were actually pressed for time at the very end, so we really had to push and push and push and push and get our engine, because this car needed to be out of here, because it was taking too long. You know, I mean, my family members got a business to run, so I understand. And we were allowed to do this for free. We were allowed to work on it with our own tools and be inside of an enclosed building. So, very thankful for that. Yeah, this engine actually runs. It actually runs fairly well. It's got a little bit of a miss to it, but we haven't really looked into that yet because the car's just currently sitting. But um, yeah, here pretty soon we'll work on that. But yeah, this is the inline four. This is with the everything pretty much put together. As you can see, we're putting coolant in the thing there. What's not. And I don't know what this image is, but I think this image is us. Oh yeah, so you can see kind of shiny black there amongst all the other kind of pale black stuff. So what we did was, you've seen a lot of those wires exposed in a lot of those previous images. We actually bought. You can actually buy the stuff. I forget what it's called, but it's basically wire covering stuff. The name escapes me, but yeah, we completely redone all of that so that the wires could be protected and stuff like that. And I think that's why that image is there and whatnot. And right next to that yellow thing there you can see it there. That's where you check the oil. Right next to that is actually where the oil filter is for oil changes. It's a very strange little thing. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the video. Oh, and one more thing. So you're going to see my my recording software just ever so slightly. Apologies for that. It's a little bit crude, but I'm going to try and make it work. We'll see. All right, and I would also like to apologize for the quality. My phone is not the best quality in the world, but I'm not going to talk during this video. Just a short little minute clip, so no big deal. I'll start back at the. It says 28 seconds. I don't know. Anyway, just go ahead and play. This is a Windows media player, so whatever. All right.
You ready? Oh boy, howdy, she fucking runs, huh? Junkyard motor success. Yeah, if that transmission wasn't ruined, I would have never picked this motor. If that transmission hadn't been ruined like it was. Because they ran over something bad. Hell yeah. You spill a little coolant on the exhaust, huh? Think so. Got any leaks? Can't see nothing, but we got a light. There we go. Yep, she is in. Currently running. Heck yeah. And she purring. Little all four cylinders of it. Little Ecotech. Alright, sweet.
Yep, and there's the video. And yeah. So yeah. And that is where our video is going to come to a close. So anything, I do hope you enjoyed this little look into one of the auto mechanic projects that I had had a lot of trouble with. To believe it or not, this engine was a bit of a monster. But yeah, that is going to be it for this episode of Real Car Mechanic Simulator. That's what I'm going to call this series. We'll have another video eventually on another project that we're doing. But yeah, I do hope you enjoyed, and until next time, whatever that may be, I guess it's a goodbye.